Hello everyone, my name's Will Humphrey and welcome to my isolated talk, A Good Talk Spoiled. Hope you enjoy it. First of all, Mark Twain famously had the quote that golf was a good walk spoiled, and I think he was wrong, very, very wrong. Golf is a fabulous game, or sport depending on your definition, and that's a chat for another day. I played the game off and on since I was about 14, and I think it's utterly maddening and completely brilliant in equal measure. And I believe it can teach you an awful lot about who you are, where you are in your life, and where you're going, as well as getting you to think differently about ideas. But what do I know? Like Twain, I'm another white middle-class bloke who likes spending time in taking part in an elitist pastime rather than making big, important decisions. Nothing at all like this man. So in order to try and convince you that actually the leader of the free world has it right, I've got 18 reasons that are focused on just why it's important that you should pick up a 7-iron and head to your local driving range, when of course we eventually can. And don't not to just regard the game as something that's only for old, wealthy, sartorially challenged people. I think it can teach you a lot about yourself. So I've got 18 holes and points to talk through here, ranging from a sense of humour, how it can help you forge a mindset, right through to how it can help you focus on your flaws and help you create serendipity. So there's 18 here, and I hope I can get through them in the sort of 10 to 15 minutes. So first of all, golf is all about having a sense of humour. Churchill once described it as a game whose aim is to hit a very small ball into an even smaller hole with weapons singularly ill-defined for the purpose. And I think that's quite important because no matter how accomplished you are at sport, you aren't always going to be very good when you start. You'll miss the ball, make it go sideways or even backwards. You will, I'm sorry to say, look like a bit of an idiot. However, you will occasionally hit the ball well. It'll go forward and, all being well, it'll go up in the air. You'll feel like an absolute hero. And then you'll duff the next 10, make a complete meal of it, and despite doing something very similar to what you did when you hit the ball well. You have to laugh or you cry, and a sense of humour is absolutely critical. The need for humour is also true when you eventually go out on the course. Golf isn't like other games of sports. You can be good one day, hitting the ball cleanly and well at the driving range, and then you step out on the course and you go back to your rank beginner days where you make a mess of things, where the wind makes a good shot into a bad one, and when there's no discernible reason why. This sort of thing will happen to you outside of a golf course in your life and in your career, which means you will have to laugh at it all. And I think it's absolutely critical to maintaining a sense of sanity in these strange times. So point 2. Handling nerves. I rather like the thought that there's no matter how good you are, there's always a bit of a compromise between what your ego is able to let you to do and what experience helps you to do, and then what your nerves actually let you do. There is nowhere more terrifying than standing on the first tee. It's a moment where all of the fear of failure crystallises. You stand over the ball with your weapon of choice, and you're as likely as even the most amateurish player to look like you've never played the game before, dribbling the ball some 20 yards along the ground or worse. It's something that can be conquered, but you've got to prepare properly, both physically and mentally. You've got to warm up and loosen your shoulders, and you've got to critically imagine just where the ball should go. And of course, none of that's any guarantee that that'll work. The worst may still happen, but a little bit of preparation will go a very long way in helping to banish those nerves. And the same is true in your life. You can manage nerves through physical and mental preparation. You may never ever banish the fear, and perhaps nor should you, but you can help quiet them down and focus your efforts. Listening to advice. When you find yourself in a difficult situation, it's often tempting to talk to as many people as possible and to listen to them all. Advice is often helpful, but these people can't solve your problem for you and aren't in the same situation as you are, because you are you, and you'll handle the situation in your own way. I'm not decrying advice entirely, it's often very helpful, but listening to it shouldn't take you over. These aren't the people, bear in mind, stood over a 150-yard 5-iron punch shot into a strong headwind. You're the one who's doing it. So take every piece of advice with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Hole 4, appearance. So golf is a remarkable game. You just have to get a little ball into the hole, and exactly how you do it's entirely up to you. You can be like an 80-year-old senior, hitting the ball no great distance but straight as you like, or smashing it all over the course but putting like a demon. Ultimately, it's just about the score. And in your profession and in your life, you signed up to this career, this creative life, and provided you have a goal, you can get there any way you like. Don't be dictated to by a presumption that you should go about it a certain way because someone else has. Provided you're driving towards a goal, it doesn't matter how it looks, just how effective it is. Hole 5, forging a mindset. There's been an awful lot written about the golf swing, but in truth, the only thing that matters is the moment of striking the ball. The rest is noise. What works for one person does not work for the other. And when you've cleared your mind and work, typically is when you do your best, whatever that looks like. Conversely, that's true for doing work straight away after a good night's sleep, or why good ideas come to you when you're doing something incredibly mundane. You need a mindset that's grounded in blissful, second-hand thinking that's sort of pure and straightforward. Hole 6, decision making. In life or on the golf course, it's very easy to see only fairways and greens, to ignore all of the bunkers, water features and general hazards, to take on the problems head on and, unfortunately, to plop your ball square into the middle of a lake. You can get a bit smarter than that. Have a bit of a think about those other shots or decisions that you have in your armoury. It doesn't always have to be death or glory when you're making decisions. And the same is true with any creative decision making you think about. You needn't focus on the high risk all of the time. Often it's smarter to think laterally and to take a more conservative approach. Point 7. Focus. So there's so much happening in our lives. Messages to be replied to, bins to be taken out, children to be placated. Ultimately, what matters with creativity is the small space between our ears, when we're able to balance thinking about things in the background with carving out time to truly think about problems and opportunities. And so it is in golf. Your swing can look remarkably strange, like a gentleman called Jim Furyk, whose swing was once described as an octopus falling out of a tree. But what really matters is the position the club is in when it hits the ball, a very, very small moment. The rest is noise, and so it should be in your life. Just focus on exactly what has to be done and try and carve out the time for the rest. Ambition. The famous 80s film about golf, Caddyshack, is worth a watch, if only for Chevy Chase and Bill Murray's roles. Chase's character in particular, the best golfer in display, with some deeply philosophical and slightly insane tendencies, has some interesting things to say about mindset and ambition, as you can read here. And it's absolutely worth tempering what you'd like to achieve with what happens to you in your life. There will be unexpected obstacles. You'll be stuck behind some trees now and again, but occasionally there'll be bounces which you didn't deserve, where you avoid troubles by sheer, pure, blind luck, and you have to acknowledge the sheer, let's be honest, absurdity of the whole thing. Attitude. So relaxed attitude. There's a video game taunt I'm reminded of when it comes to improvement. Literally, it's to get good. It all sounds so straightforward, but not necessarily when you're at the foot of a mountain looking up. This also feels particularly challenging in today's environment, where you can see people of all stripes who are where you want to be. Well, for me, that feels like something of the wrong approach. Don't focus on the end point. You're not there yet. You might not be there yet for months or years. Focus on the small wins, the scripts which resonate with people, the well-struck iron shots. Think about why those worked and other things didn't, and ultimately just don't let it get you down. Fundamentally, it's about maintaining that relaxed attitude. Your imagination. So it's very, very easy to get down on yourself, to stifle your imagination because you think there's a specific process you need to follow. And to some extent, learning mechanistically isn't a bad thing at the start. There are some fundamentals you need to learn. Tell yourself, as you write a tonally wrong proposition or mishit that 7-iron for the 7th or 8th time, that this is all part of the learning experience. You need to use your imagination to visualise where that script could be, that brief could go, or where that iron shot should end up. You might not be there yet, but you should always dream about where you could be. Your imagination can be fuel to help keep you going, and should always be the case. Resilience, mental resilience. So golf, when it's played really well, is very, very boring to watch, especially if you've not played it. Hit ball a couple of times, hole a putt, move on. But hitting a drive is different every time on a golf course. The wind might pick up, someone might cough in your backswing, and iron shots will be different too. Your ball might have mud on it and fly differently. And that's to say nothing of the intricacies of chipping and putting, all of which involve a slightly different technique. What's more, you won't hit every shot cleanly and perfectly, so you've got to plan for that as well. And you can have one day where one part of your game is brilliant, from tee to green when you hit the ball really well, but your short game, when you're really close to the hole, means you score terribly. This, I think, is the same creatively. Some days you'll be able to think laterally at the drop of a hat, but can't quite articulate what you want to say. What matters is bringing your standards to bear and just grinding your way through it and putting up with what you have in that day, in that moment. Because no one ever has everything firing at all the same times. So cheating. In any situation, you have a few options. You could practice your hardest, learning it better, Or you could drop a ball in a favourable lie position, or you could move your ball. Famously, Donald Trump does a bit of the latter, which is why you can't trust his scores, to say nothing of his presidency. And I think if you venture out to the golf course post this, you learn a lot about a person when you play golf with them, or when you work alongside them. How did they get themselves out of that creative rut? How open are they to being honest about whether they really did that piece of work? The very worst, in my experience, claim the best left, right and centre. Don't be like those people. Put up with the issues and think your way around it. You'll learn more about yourself when you play golf or when you create something. It's much, much more satisfying and makes you better at your job if you're able to create yourself out of trouble. So, practicing and learning. Both golf and life have an awful lot of luck being doled out. The odd bounce, a putt lipping out, or a client buying into your clever strategy. However, some people seem to have more than their fair share of that. Gary Player hit upon something with his quote, which you can read on screen now. It's not about blindly practicing, but trying to make sure that your bad shots really aren't that bad. To make sure that when you turn in a piece of writing or thinking, even if you think it's a bit mediocre, that average is likely to benefit from the odd bit of luck and be accepted because you've practiced so often, so your average just gets better and better. The worst people, in my experience, blame a lack of luck and decry why they aren't where they want to be. The very best accept those bad bounces and setbacks and vow to learn from them and practice and get better. So your flaws. There are, of course, idiosyncrasies which you'll never overcome. You may always present in a certain way, in my case, like a slightly 1970s geography teacher. Think of the most obscure approach first, rather than the most simplistic. No amount of practice will change ultimately how you are. So, you should try and own it to some degree. Seve, the man on screen you see here, is a famous European golfer, was very, very wayward off the tee, so he was always in funny situations for his second shot. But he had a short game to die for. He was deadly around the greens. He knew what he was and what he wasn't. Personally, I may never be the most numerate planner in advertising, but I know enough to be useful, and I like to think I can write reasonably well. That helps make up for some of my weaknesses. That hasn't stopped me from trying to get more numerical, but it means I know what I am and what I'm not. Self-belief. We've all got our own ways of working. Some of us are night owls, others are early risers, but it takes time to work out your rhythm, your way of getting your mind to function at its best. Some people need other people to bounce stuff off of, but whatever you do, to have trust in yourself and what you've learned. And so it is in golf. You learn the fundamentals of a golf swing, how to address the ball, grip, posture, weight transfer, shoulder rotation, and the rest is up to you. You have to trust that what you've learned will see you through, like the chap on the screen, a gentleman called Jim Furyk, which has a very, very peculiar golf swing. But remember, much like the creative process, it takes a good few years before you'll feel comfortable to go beyond the fundamentals. If you've learned the fundamentals and trust them, you can do it any way you like. Hole 16, serendipity. You know what you have to do on a golf course. You have to get the ball in a hole, which ranges from some 130 to 550 yards away. Generally, it's in between 3 to 5 shots, which is the par for the hole. If you can get the ball in the hole within less shots, you're under par, where the very best play, or you're over par, which is where most of us reside. This is less obvious for the creative process. You often don't know what par is for the task or thought you've been asked to help out with. So, you need to think on and try and get a sense of it. Read religiously on the category or at the job at hand. Read widely so that when inspiration strikes, you have a sense of what par, or in a happy day, under par looks like, and can best respond to that. Hole 17. Self-awareness. When you first start doing anything, you have a beginner's mindset. Treasure it. You'll soon lose it and get frustrated if you're not living up to your standards. And there's nothing more frustrating than having the tools to do something and making a mess of it. Again, this is another quote from Seve Ballesteros, when he famously four-putted despite being an excellent putter. So, step back. Acknowledge that sometimes not everything works together in perfect harmony. Sometimes you just need a proper night's sleep or a fresh cup of coffee and everything will make a lot more sense. So it is in golf. Your iron game might be on one day, but you can't buy a putt. You hit the ball sideways off the tee, but you can chip and putt like Seve himself. Reconcile yourself to those things, and double down on practice, which will help quiet those demons in your head. And then finally, future. A life of working in the creative industry means that often the future is uncertain. It's not for you the tried and trusted world of accountancy or law, where, being honest, they're a little bit more linear. No, our careers are a lot more of a roller coaster. The highs will be tremendous and remind you of why you want to make things. The lows will seem pretty low, I can't lie about that. But remind yourself of Ben Hogan. Ben Hogan was the world's best golfer in the sort of late 40s to early 50s. And then he suffered a near fatal car accident when he was hit by a bus. He had to entirely remodel his game as a result, but got back to his best and won multiple championships with a remodelled swing. Ultimately, in my opinion, life, like golf, is about how you respond to things. Setbacks, successes and all the bits in between. And good luck to you on your own walk spoiled. Thanks very much.